Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the November team and SIDF, we would like to welcome you all to our session today, Towards a Sustainable Industrial Future. Today's workshop brings together global, regional, and local perspectives on sustainability, decarbonization, and circular economy practices, all aligned with Vision 2030. We'll begin with our first presentation. Our first speaker, our colleague, Mr. James Wheeler, Senior Market Expert at SIDF, presenting on sustainability and carbon neutrality. James, the floor is yours.
Have you got the clicker? Okay, hi, good morning everyone. Thank you to everyone attending in person and online today, and thank you to Fahad and your team for all his hard work in preparing today's session. I'm very pleased to present this topic to you today. Obviously, I'm heavily involved in the mining and metals industry, and the issue of carbon neutrality is very much at the forefront of all discussions. I'd like to provide a quick 5-minute overview of what carbon neutrality is, the pledges by nations, the main issues, and the stakeholders. I'm delighted to be joined for the first half of this session by leading authorities in the subject matter. Our guest speakers, Stefan Kwiatkowski, who is Head of Decarbonisation of Rio Tinto Mining, Anna Narouche, who is a partner of Cloud & Co. International Law Firm, and Brad Dalton, Site Screening and Consultancy Lead of Fugro, a leading global geotechnical survey and geoscience service provider. The issue of rising carbon dioxide levels is the main contributor to global warming. An increase in CO2 levels amplifies the natural greenhouse effect, traps heat, and as a result raises average global temperatures every year. Although temperatures have only reportedly increased by 1.2 degrees since the 1800s, scientists have provided overwhelming evidence that 25% of this increase has occurred since 2010. There are, of course, natural emissions of carbon dioxide from the Earth within the Earth system. Oceans release at the top in red refers to either upwelling or thermal release, where carbon-rich water sources rises to the surface and releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Also, respiration and decomposition of marine animals and algae are covered in ocean release. Animal respiration is fairly self-explanatory, and organic matter decomposition, the rate of which is dependent upon factors such as temperature, moisture and aeration, emits significant carbon dioxide. And a small contribution of less than 1% comes from volcanic eruptions. So these are naturally emitting carbon dioxide that's happened since the beginning of time. The CO2 emitted from these natural emissions are offset by what we refer to as natural sinks in green. These are ecosystems that absorb more than they give off, and include oceans and vegetation. Globally, an estimated 190 to 220 gigatons of carbon dioxide is produced by natural means and absorbed by natural sinks in a continuous CO2 exchange. The anthropogenic cycle are the emissions from direct human activity rather than natural activity, and an estimated 34 to 40 gigatons of CO2 is released per year. This additional volume has a significant impact on climate change and cannot be absorbed by the natural carbon cycle as we just discussed. The primary driver is the burning of fossil fuels, which commands an 87% global share of anthropogenic emissions. Basically, all fossil fuels contain carbon atoms, and when burned for energy, react with oxygen in the air to produce CO2. Other drivers are deforestation, agriculture and forestry that eliminate the natural vegetation and reduce photosynthetic activity. So we've looked at the natural emissions and the human-driven emissions, which are the main driver for accelerated global warming. So what's the answer? Carbon neutrality is a term when a household, business, government or country achieves a balance between the CO2 emitted and that removed from the atmosphere. Firstly, a clear target to achieve neutrality must be set, and the boundaries and the scope of the stakeholders' operations are clearly defined. You then need to calculate your total greenhouse emissions from all sources, and these sources are segregated and defined as scopes. Scope 1 are your direct operations that an organisation controls or owns. Stage 2 are indirect emissions generated from purchased energy. Bear with me one moment. And Scope 3 are other indirect emissions. These are upstream and downstream activities that the company cannot control, but companies can consider when choosing. One of the main issues is the methodology of how carbon footprint is assessed, quantified, and then reported. There are numerous examples of multinational companies in legal trouble due to the integrity and the scope of their reporting, minimizing their footprint results. A great example of a comprehensive global standardized network or framework is the Greenhouse Gas Protocol governed by the World Business Council. Once your footprint is fully quantified, efforts must be made to reduce your emission footprint. Common examples, which undoubtedly we'll hear from Rio Tinto, include transition to renewable energy, improved energy efficiency, and to adopt sustainable practices. The remaining balance is finally addressed by either investing in carbon removal projects such as reforestation, or to purchase carbon credits from verified projects that reduce emissions elsewhere in the world. Now, the largest contributors globally to global warming and CO2 emissions are China, USA, and India, who collectively contribute 57% of the world's anthropogenic emissions. Consistently, the largest responsible sector is electricity and thermal heat production, as you can see there in the blue graph. And China and India heavily rely on coal-powered fuel, which is generally a far more cost-effective option. And of course, the same is used to power the nation's significant industries, including steel, cement, and iron, all of which are known for their high energy intensity power requirements. With regard to where pledged countries currently are within reaching net zero, the only two who achieve their status are Bhutan and Suriname, here on the left-hand side, which is hardly surprising considering Bhutan is 65% covered in rainforest and Suriname is 93%, and both countries with developed renewable hydropower sources. The Paris Agreement on the right-hand side, you can see where most of the countries are sitting with regards to a 2050 target. This is the global benchmark accepted by 195 countries worldwide, again with the target carbon neutrality by 2050. Countries with more developed industry and energy and chemical portfolios, such as China and even Saudi Arabia, have pledged a 2060 target, and India pledging a 2070 target. And the biggest issue for India, India's pathway, is its heavy reliance on coal for energy and a lack of concrete policies and significant financial and infrastructure challenges. In terms of the key policy milestones for carbon neutrality, the first significant treaty addressing climate change and greenhouse gas emissions was the Kyoto Protocol in 1997. As a legally binding international treaty, it challenged 37 industrialized countries in the European Union to reduce emissions by 5% based on 1990 reported levels. This was then succeeded by the Paris Agreement in 2015 with more quantifiable targets. The main pledge was to limit global warming below 2 degrees centigrade and significantly reduce emissions. This was entered into by 195 countries, all of whom developed long-term low-emission development strategies and reported progress on an annual basis. Finally, in 2020, the European Climate Law was established as a recognised legal framework amongst its member states on how 2050 or 2050 carbon neutrality will be achieved. Most countries at the bottom there have established their own national legal principles and policies. However, as most of you will be aware, the USA stance since President Trump has taken office is to withdraw from the 2015 Paris Agreement, and the President has indicated his intent to progress with this effective January 2026. Finally, where does Saudi Arabia sit in all of this? Vision 2030 is heavily focused on sustainability, environmental awareness and carbon neutrality. The Saudi Green Initiative is a national initiative launched in 2021 to combat climate change and aim for a 2060 net zero emissions. The three core focused areas include emissions reduction, afforestation, and land and sea protection. Specifically, within Saudi Arabia, 700 megawatts of solar and wind power was connected to the grid in 2022 to power 100,000 homes. Significant renewable energy projects are underway and under development with a capacity of nearly 14 gigawatt. Species of native trees are being planted across 62 approved sites across Saudi Arabia, and 100 million mangrove trees are being planted with a key focus on the Red Sea development and Farazan area. Not to mention the clean hydrogen projects, the green fuel initiatives, and even the Lime project with the target to home 9 million people as a 100% renewable energy powered city. Thank you.
Thank you, James. So now we welcome Ms. Anna Nerish, partner at Clyde & Co., who will provide a global legal and regulatory perspective on sustainability, infrastructure, and energy transition. So Clyde & Co. are a leading global law firm with a Saudi presence. So please, Mr. Anna, you can begin.
In my brief presentation, I intend to just tell you what we, as a global law firm, do towards our carbon emission reduction, and then focus on some of the trends that we're seeing from our clients and how ESG-related risks are addressed in the cycle of a mining project from a legal perspective. So the first slide, and I don't intend on to focus on this too much, is what we are doing as a global law firm to reduce our carbon footprint. As James mentioned, the large portion of our carbon emissions comes from scope 3 emissions, so indirectly from sources which are sourced through the business and our suppliers. And one of the key ways in which we seek to reduce our carbon footprint is by making better choices and ensuring that the suppliers that we deal with have the right certifications and have similar targets that mirror our ambition. But if we look at key focus areas for our clients and also some of the trends in the market. Sorry, I think that's skipped through. First of all, as a firm, we carry out a risk radar on an annual basis where we ask questions of general counsels of multinational companies as to what's on their risk radar and what's keeping them awake at night. And this year, ESG and the risks associated with climate change has increased as a high impact concern, rising to 44% above the 31% from the previous year. So this is clearly something that's on the radar for our clients, especially clients who are operating in the extractive industries like oil and gas and mining. And the way that our clients focus on this and try to address those concerns is through counterparties, and that's requiring counterparties to align with their decarbonization goals and to disclose emissions data. To have certain sustainability certifications, so that's a demand for compliance with recognized ESG standards for offtake contracts, for example, but also in the financing documentation, and enhance ESG reporting obligations. And that's in the context of offtake agreements, but also in facility agreements and bankability of projects whereby lenders seek regular sustainability and audit rights to monitor progress, as well as certain sustainability assurances throughout the life of the project and the financing. Some of the key trends that we're seeing, especially in projects which require financing from external lenders, is increased use of sustainability-linked loans and pricing incentives which are linked to emissions reduction. There is stricter regulatory and investor pressure. So ESG compliance is increasingly a critical factor as an investment criteria and market reputation. And I think that's something that is especially clear over the last few years through investor and shareholder based litigation around greenwashing and holding companies accountable for the statements and some of the carbon emissions targets that published. And there's a clear shift towards transparency and traceability. So there's a growing emphasis on supply chain due diligence and origin of minerals. And that is something that we see through the use of technology. So, for example, traceability of minerals throughout the project phase, but also during the production and more development and production stage of mining assets. So what does that look like from a very high level legal perspective when you're looking at your facility agreements and also the offtake of minerals? We're seeing increasing contractual obligations, whether that's in your offtake or finance agreements, and that's through dedicated ESG clauses, but also through ongoing undertakings, as I said, throughout the life of the project, and reporting obligations. And ultimately, there are consequences when these particular provisions are not complied with, or if certifications are breached or withdrawn, and that would trigger early repayment of your facility and your loan, or alternatively, it may impact your offtake agreement, leading to early termination. So as I said, we are seeing an increased use of dedicated ESG clauses where the parties contractually allocate risk for ESG obligations and compliance. And that's compliance with environmental standards, human rights, etc. This is linked to termination events. So, for example, failure to meet the ESG commitments, whether it's through your emission targets or certifications, and that can trigger early termination rights and repayment rights. Clearly, the devil is in the details, so it's very important to ensure that these provisions are not too broadly drafted, therefore not to trigger default and unintentional circumstances or circumstances which may be beyond the control of the contracting parties. This is usually addressed through reps and warranties. I'm sure you're all familiar with seeing those in international contracts. And these are undertakings to adhere with ESG laws and standards, and this therefore shifting the risk of these onto the borrower or onto the producer and seller, given by a recourse in the event that those are breached. There are covenants in the ongoing ESG performance. So this is something standard in, for example, LMA financing documentation, where lenders would like to have access to audit rights and to continuous ESG reporting and monitoring, to ensure that they have enforcement rights in the event of a breach. Similarly, we're seeing a wider use of material adverse change, which are linked to ESG factors. So if there is an environmental incident, these are increasingly recognized as MAC events, which is a new trend. It's not something that we have historically have seen in projects of this nature. There may be pricing adjustments or penalties for non-ESG compliance. that is again is used more as a commercial stick to ensure that the goals which are set are achieved, and that the companies, the producers, continuously strive towards them. FM, so force majeure carve-outs for ESG issues, and that's ESG related disruptions such as regulatory changes or community protests are sometimes excluded from force majeure protections, leaving the risk for those events with the seller or the operator. I will be very happy to take questions afterwards. I know that we have Q&A session, so to pick up on any of those trends in more detail. But thank you for your attention, and I'll pass on to the next speaker.
Questions posed for later. Thank you, Anna, for your insights. We would like to welcome Mr. Brad, who is our next speaker, Site Characterization Lead at Fugro, presenting how advanced geotechnical and environmental assessments support sustainable project development. Thank you, Brad. The floor is yours.
Very much, everyone, for having me. What an absolute delight it is to be here. Okay, so I work for a company called Fugro. Fugro is a company that has been around since 1962. We have a large number of people that work across the world in energy markets, water, and mining. Our aim in the world is to try and make it a better place by using spatial technology and a variety of other things in order to do that. And I'm just going to make sure that I get the screen shown. Can someone confirm that you can see that? Thanks, Sarah. We are committed to the sustainability within the business, and the aim is to create a world that we can live together in purposefully. As you can see, there's a number of different strategic priorities that we have within our business, and those priorities are wrapped up around the idea that we want to make the world a better place. We have a large number of employees. We operate across a very large number of countries, I should say. We run at a market cap of 1.6 billion euros. The vast majority of our work is always been oil and gas, but in recent times we have diversified into a number of different areas, renewables, infrastructure, water, oil and gas. And part of that drive has been to allow the business to become part of the new world, where we have a need for sustainability and renewability, and we want to be part of that. And as a geodata company, one of the most important aspects of putting together, say, a wind farm, is to understand the ground that you're working within and how it's going to impact on the world that is going to be built above it. So for us, it's a combination of ocean, airborne, space, and land to make that happen. We try to create positive impact through our value chain. We are deeply committed to sustainable energy transitions, which include things like working with our suppliers, working within our own operations, and working with our clients in order to drive towards a net target zero sort of concepts and commitments and so forth. As you can see, we've got some fairly decent ratings from well-known independent sources that talk about what Fugro has been able to achieve and is aiming to achieve, and all of this can be found within our annual reports. And this is just an example of where we've come from and where we currently sit. We note that within the context of the rating system, that we have an ESG rating risk of 14, which is considered low risk, and we're second out of 335 companies in the construction and engineering sector when compared to our ESG performance. Our services in geotechnical and offshore services have an SBTi rating, and we have a very large reporting component that is put together every year within our annual report that we stick to as a company, and it's driven down through the business from the CEO, who's very passionate about this. We have a decarbonisation pathway towards 2035, and that incorporates essentially all of our equipment, which is not just vessels, but also other parts of the business. For example, we have CPT equipment, which is used on land, and we have drilling machines which exist right across the world. We are trying our best to get them to come towards alternative fuels, biofuels, and the idea is that those machines will not only be standalone in terms of robotics and automation and so forth, but and that means less people on board, which means less fuel that is required, and so on. But it also means that you can operate them remotely. So instead of having a very large ship, you can have one that's about the size of your car that will do the same thing, and clearly that doesn't require people because there's nobody on board. The people that operate it are in a building somewhere onshore, making that vessel work. And we aim to be certified as far as the various different types of fuels that we use, which will eventually remove the need for oil, but also moving towards the idea that we can electrify. In the electrification field, we've taken a lot of our vessels and we've converted them into methanol or battery, not completely as far as removing hydrocarbons out of the system, and not completely towards completely sustainable green at this point. But the roadmap shows clearly that that's where we're headed, and the whole idea is to create unmanned surface vessels, unmanned equipment on the land, and so on. A recent example of this is the electric deep drive, which is a CPT machine. This is both tele-remote and automated if it's needed. It runs a X-ray fluorescent CPT system, for example, if we're talking about mining, and the whole idea of that is to sort of exert X-ray into the ground, excite the particles, read their fluorescence coming back, and as you can see, there's a very large number of minerals that we can detect. Fugro have patented about 60 different CPT nodes. This is just one of them, and the whole idea is that we can drive this particular machine from a remote location, work on a tailings dam, for example, and not have people out in danger. But also, it is 100% driven by batteries. So that means that there is no carbon footprint as such directly with the machine. But of course, you have to power the thing, so you need power from somewhere. We're a leader in the Dutch consortium, but also across the world as far as the different types of vessels that we're going to use, and converting them to run on methanol. This is the latest ship that went out in Q2 2025. It actually is operating right now. That vessel has been very successful. It is, for our clients, it's a wonderful thing to have from a regulatory point of view, and as a company, it's a wonderful offering that we have for the marketplace. Obviously, there's a cost risk. There's a risk with being able to get one machine to work with another, with clients to adopt it, and also with subcontractors to come on board. But all of those things are being worked on within the business. And of course, this is all aimed towards the idea of ocean health, coastal resilience, and inland water management. as one small part of making it a safe and livable world. One of the things worth noting is that when our ships are moving from place to place, if they're not actively picking off, we don't turn the sensors off. We actually keep the sensors going, and we donate that information to a world body that is mapping the ocean floor. And to date, we've mapped about 3 million square kilometers of the Earth's surface doing this as a free upload into that database. Our CEO has been pushing for a decade in ocean science and sustainable development, and we have agreements with UNESCO, with the Nippon Foundation, and the Global Compact, the UN Global Compact. All of this is towards stewardship of the places that we play in on a day-to-day basis. And so, as a company, we think we're on the right path, and we're working in a very positive direction. And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Brad, for this amazing presentation. So we now welcome Mr. Stefan Kwiatkowski, Head of Decarbonization at Rio Tinto. So he will share a global decarbonization practices and the industrial pathways toward emission reduction. So Rio Tinto was founded in 1873, and it's the world's second largest mining and metals corporation. So, Mr. Stefan, please, you can proceed.
Distinguished guests, hello, and thank you for inviting me to be here today. Thank you for the kind introduction. My name is Stefan Kwiatkowski, and as explained, I lead the energy and climate team that partners with our business to achieve our targets of reducing emissions by 50% by 2030 and net zero by 2050. Just before we get in, I'd just like to firstly just say Rio Tinto is very appreciative for the time that's been dedicated to date by a few of the key counterparties in the Kingdom and towards our exploratory discussions and potential joint projects. We've continued to have valuable engagement with our peer Ma'aden and several potential collaborative opportunities, as well as the Public Investment Fund and their joint subsidiary Manara. Similarly, we're very thankful to the Ministry of Industry and Mineral Resources and the Saudi Investment Development Fund, who are hosting today. So quickly today, I'd just like to take you through the key elements of Rio Tinto's climate and energy transition strategy. And to do that, I'm going to start with our climate action plan, which includes our roadmap to net zero. Then I'm going to show you how we're transforming our operations through renewable energy and partnerships. We'll take a look at some of our breakthrough technologies and the investments driving decarbonisation. And then finally, I'll just touch on the community benefits of our transition. One second while I get this next slide. Okay. So I guess when we think about the climate transition, much of the talk is synonymous with emissions reduction targets. For us, we had laid out a climate action plan, which we took to our shareholders for approval this year in 2025, which was sort of voted on comprehensively by our shareholders. And really, it's actually a sort of a wider gamut of action, starting with, I guess, our key role as a mining entity in providing the materials that are essential for the energy transition. And our business has a strong focus on iron, copper, aluminium, and lithium. As I mentioned to you earlier, we have clear targets for emissions reduction. So a very ambitious target to hit 50% reduction measured against the 2018 baseline by the end of this decade and net zero by 2050. Our ambition is clear. So how will we get there? Well, first, we're going to boost the use of renewable power to bring our total renewable energy supply up to more than 90% of our supplied operations. Secondly, we're going to look to deploy low carbon technologies for mineral processing and smelting. And thirdly, we'll use we'll transition our mining vehicles and our heavy equipment away from diesel and towards lower emissions alternatives, including renewable diesel and potentially electrification as our end state. Beyond our direct Scope 1 and 2 emissions, we're also committed to decarbonising our value chains. And so we're committed to partnering with our customers and suppliers to find better ways to help them achieve their targets. In steel, we're supporting our customers' ambitions to reduce their emissions from blast furnace basic oxygen technology by 20 to 30% by 2035 by providing direct technical support and co-developing technologies. And we're also partnering to advance direct reduced iron and electric smelting furnace pilots. And across our value chain, we're driving decarbonisation at 50 of our highest emitting suppliers and partnering with bauxite customers to reduce emissions there. Beyond pure emissions reduction, we're actively engaging on climate and energy policy aligned with net zero ambitions, and we're embedding just transition principles into our strategy, linking decarbonisation to our short-term and long-term incentives with board-level oversight. Finally, the other side of the climate equation is adaptation and resilience, and we're enhancing our ability to both by protecting our assets, our people, and the communities and the regions that we operate. So I think you can see that this plan is not just about carbon and emissions reduction, it's about securing our future, staying competitive and delivering value for all of our stakeholders, from investors and local partners to the long-term sustainability of our operations. Key to that will be our transition to net zero. And as I mentioned, we have the 50% target by 2030 and that net zero target by 2050. And this slide shows Rio Tinto's roadmap to achieving that trajectory from our 2018 baseline, and showing how we'll decline through a combination of renewable electricity, transitioning out of diesel, and making processing breakthroughs. Renewable electricity delivers the largest impact in the short term, reducing around 16.5 million tonnes of CO2. And this is largely driven by the repowering of our operations with clean energy sources, particularly in our Eastern Australian smelting operations. Diesel transition contributes another 4 million tonnes, which principally we see arriving post-2030 as new technology emerges. And then we're processing and minerals and metals accounts for about 15 million tonnes. And these are really hard to abate emissions that rely on novel technologies like ELYSIS, which is a key technology push for zero carbon aluminium smelting. In terms of emissions base, I think this will be a topic that is common to us all and passionate to us all, is energy. Rio Tinto is a significant user of energy. 500 petajoules, or half an exajoule of average annual energy consumption, is used in the business, and of that, about 50% comes from electricity. As you can see here, actually our electricity base is already very, very green. Around 78% of our electricity demand comes from renewable sources. And within that, we have nearly 8 gigawatts of either owned or contracted power, including 4 gigawatts of hydroelectric power that underpins our world-class Canadian aluminium business. Continuing our strategy and as part of our repowering program, right now we believe we're on track to achieve 90% renewable energy within our business by 2030. I did want to share a few comments just about the quality of our renewable energy and power that is both low carbon and competitive. At Rio Tinto, we're prioritizing solutions that focus on either securing owned and operated renewables or directly contracted and long-term renewable offtakes that underpin our business. And in the last 2 years, we've either built or secured new renewables power in South Africa and Madagascar, in the US, Canada, and Australia, and also in the Pilbara in Western Australia and in Queensland. Across this short-term period, we've been making large-scale investments and investing to scale and secure Rio Tinto's future for both energy and carbon. We're transforming our energy footprint And so at our Boyne smelter in Gladstone, Australia, new renewable PPAs now supply the equivalent of 10% of the Queensland's power demand. And in Western Australia, we're collaborating with traditional owner groups to explore opportunities for new renewable energy projects. We're also having to look at new technologies that will reshape our industries. You know, many of the emissions base and the energy base relies on things that do not exist yet. So we're partnering with BHP to trial Komatsu and Caterpillar battery electric haul trucks in the Pilbara. We're trialing renewable diesel in Australia and have deployed renewable diesel at our Kennecott mine in the United States. We're looking at biocarbon solutions in Quebec, hydrogen calcination in Queensland. And these innovations are all critical to decarbonising our operations in those hardest to abate processing sectors in alumina refining and aluminium smelting. It's also worth talking about our upstream and downstream emissions profile. So when we look at our Scope 3 emissions, we produced up to 50% of Pilbara blend fines pellets and completed successful industrial scale blast furnace trials with customers. We're investing in low emissions technology through our partnerships with Prime Metals, Mitsubishi, and to build a prototype plant integrating fines-based fluid bed technology with an electric smelting furnace. And as part of a joint venture with BlueScope, Woodside, Mitsui Iron Ore, and BHP, we're building Australia's largest ESF pilot in Western Australia with support from the Western Australian government and the Australian Renewable Energy Agency. I think one aspect that matters us is positioning our assets for the low carbon future. And the benefits of decarbonisation are not just about protecting the bottom line and improving our position on the production cost curve, but it's also about being well positioned to grow top line revenue. And it's in this sense, it's carbon intensity curves that we have up on the screen that matter. How much carbon is emitted per unit of product sold? We pay particular attention to the carbon curves of our commodities, understanding how competitive our products are in the markets based on their carbon content, which is why we're moving our assets down the carbon intensity curve as it positions us well for green premiums. Just as it's difficult to forecast the evolution of fossil fuel markets, it's also hard to predict with conviction the timing and extent of society's willingness to pay for green products. However, we believe that this moment will come, and our decarbonisation efforts will position us to take advantage with a cost-neutral pathway to 2030. We see this as no-cost optionality. And looking at our major commodity groups, our Atlantic portfolio is already world-class, and our repowering efforts in the Pacific aluminium operations will bring our Australian smelters closer to that position. Our copper portfolio has seen a total reduction of about 70% in its reported emissions since 2018. And for example, the 120-year-old mine at Kennecott now emits at about 80% less greenhouse gas than it did just 8 years ago. So we're committed to our 2030 and 2050 targets. By enhancing our leadership position in each commodity, we'll remain resilient and poised for the opportunity as further shifts in global expectations and markets emerge. I think the final point that I'd just like to touch on is how we actually deliver and how we navigate through the transition is crucial. And decarbonisation for us is more than just plain economics. As a mining company, we rely on our ability to extract resources from the jurisdictions we operate in. And so we need strong, thriving communities to support our assets. And we're working to deliver decarbonisation activity that creates opportunity and values for our region. We've discussed our approach to renewable energy partnerships with Indigenous communities and how it can unlock greater levels of participation and through that transition. Repowering the Boyne smelter in Queensland will secure the aluminium industry in the state for 4,500 direct jobs that it supports, and the new renewables can incentivise emerging industries in the regions that are feeling the impacts of a net zero transition most acutely. Finally, we're investing in nature-based solutions as well, backing new opportunities like biocarbon production, hydrogen, and Pongamia farming, and co-designing programs that strengthen communities and livelihoods. So by taking this integrated approach to technology, regions, and partnerships, we'll be positioning our business, our customers, and our communities to succeed in a low-carbon future. With that, I'll stop, and I'll hand over to James and the panel for Q&A, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan, and we wish you and Rio Tinto good luck in your projects in the kingdom. I would like to thank all speakers for their wonderful presentations, and we would like to now open the floor for a Q&A session with our global speakers, Anna, Brad, and Stefan. Please feel free to raise questions from the audience. We have Lanud Sali.
Hello, thank you all for your presentations. My question is for Mrs. Anna from Clyde & Co. So I have two questions. The first one is regarding President Trump's stance against carbon neutrality and related climate initiatives. When such administrations effectively oppose established net zero targets, what are the consequences from a legal standpoint to USA and major corporations operating within the country? The second question is, as a global law firm, do you witness an increase in legal activity and litigation surrounding carbon neutrality or less? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. It's a very good one and obviously a very topical one given the current geopolitical trends. I think clearly when a major economy steps back from net zero commitments, there are legal consequences that have a global and cross-border effect. However, companies with international footprint still have obligations and face strict requirements and obligations under EU, UK, and Asian regimes, as well as, of course, investor-driven ESG expectations. So this, of course, creates a patchwork of compliance requirements and increases compliance complexity and cross-border risk. So I think, in short, the answer to the first part of your question is that whilst the US may be stepping away from net zero commitments, there are still ongoing legal requirements in other countries which would impact cross-border operations and operators. From a litigation standpoint, I wouldn't say that we're seeing necessarily an increase, but rather a shift in the litigation focus. Greenwashing claims, shareholder suits, and consumer class actions are increasing as companies make carbon neutral statements without robust verification. Regulations in Europe and Asia are also tightening disclosure standards, so companies cannot rely on single jurisdiction leniencies. Therefore, as a global law firm advising on cross-border compliance and verification processes, we see increased emphasis on regulatory verifications, due diligence, supplier chain due diligence and verifications to ensure that the companies can robustly support the statements that they're making to the market, especially where these are publicly traded companies.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. I think we have another question from Abdullah. Or Nawaf, actually, yes.
I got a question for Brad. It's in fact that you talked about the green methanol. It seems very promising, but there are a lot of constraints and challenges. Can you please elaborate more about that? And can you elaborate about the technological and the infrastructure gap that exists now, and when it's going to be closed? Is it a long-term issue? And if the solution is going to be a long-term solution or not?
I suppose the conversion of vessels to operate on low carbon green fuel or green methanol is a significant investment. There is quite a lot of challenges in trying to achieve that. Currently, only a few low carbon alternatives to marine diesel are available, of which green methanol is considered the most viable option for large-scale introduction. And successful transition depends on the further development of technology and infrastructure across the entire shipping industry across the world in order to make that work. We're leading a consortium of Dutch maritime sector and world experts aimed at developing engine technology, ship design and safety procedures for methanol as a low carbon shipping fuel. And while the production of green methanol is being developed to the point where it is sustainable and responsibly sourced, and we are also looking at hydrotreated vegetable oil, which is called HVO, which is a type of biofuel. It's an alternative to low emission fuel, and of course, because it's a diesel base, then it can be used in a compression engine similar to what you use right now. In 2024, Fugro started developing an approach to structural, commercial and offerings of HVO, and in the GHG emission forecast, biofuel is assumed to be available as a transition fuel going into the future for owned and chartered vessels as well as other assets. It's assumed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80 to 99% compared to current. And we have an excerpt about our methanol conversion available on our website. If that answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brad. I think we have a third question from our colleague Abdullah.
Yes, greetings all. I want to ask Mr. Sifan. I believe Emirates Global Aluminium has produced carbon.
It uses an electrolytic process which is highly energy intensive, and so we have the benefit of a pretty large 4 gigawatts of hydroelectric power that runs out across our various smelters in Canada. The key challenge for aluminium production for that portfolio actually is the anode, sort of the anode that you use in electrolysis. So since the birth of that electrolysis, you've always relied on a carbon anode. To push the boundaries further, we launched the ELYSIS project, which is a joint venture with Alcoa. And we've been supported by the governments of Quebec and Canada, and also sort of downstream customers such as Apple to develop an inert anode technology which will take the carbon out of that process and take something which is sort of, let's say, 70% green today to hopefully sort of a full 100%. Earlier this month, the ELYSIS successfully started up its first commercial scale anode cell. We're really excited to see that. Sort of beyond the actual sort of technology side, we've been on this journey for some time. So actually in 2012, we co-founded the Aluminium Stewardship Initiative, which looked at setting global sustainability standards. And in 2016, we had we introduced what we called Renew Al, so another play on words with the AL at the end. So that was the first low carbon aluminium brand produced with 100% hydropower across our smelters in Iceland, New Zealand and Canada. So that product is there and it exists, and it means that we're well positioned for those markets that are willing to pay. Ultimately, we like to see sort of a premium for that profile, and we strongly hope that premium will grow into the future, along with what Emirates Global Aluminium will want for Minimal. Thank you. Great question.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Thank you to all our speakers. We welcome you to continue the session with us through the live stream, and we hope you have a great day ahead. Thank you very much to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Thank you all very much. So our next segment is a joint regional presentation. Will be delivered by Mr. Yasser Al-Jahani, Director of Supply Chain Management at Riyadh Cement Company. Mr. Wael Al-Dosari, Plant Manager at the National Lead Smelting Company. Mr. Faisal Fardan, Loss Prevention Analyst at SIDF. So this presentation will highlight a collaborative sustainability initiative between the three entities and with SIDF supporting the development and the alignment as well of the project. So I now welcome our colleague, Mr. Faisal Al-Fardan, to start the presentation.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أسعد الله مساكم جميعا. أولا أهلا وسهلا فيكم جميعا وشكرا لتلبية الدعوة وخصوصا اللي شرفونا من خارج منطقة الرياض. اليوم نستعرض معكم قصة نجاح حقيقية وواقعية تحت مبادرة Industrial Symbiosis to Build a Circular Economy. وبدأت قصتها من سنة تقريبا من شهر نوفمبر الماضي، وشهر نوفمبر كله بركة أثناء حديث جانبي مع الأخ وائل من مصنع رصاص انطلقت هالمبادرة. الاندستريال سيمبيوسيس بشكل بسيط هو كيف نستفيد من الويست الناتج من المصنع ونحاول نعظمه بدل ما يروح على اللاندفل، نحاول نستخدمه as a raw material في مصنع آخر. زي ما تشوفون هنا فاكتوري A وفاكتوري B. الكيس اللي صار معنا حولنا الويست بدل ما راح على اللاندفل استخدمناه في اسمنت الرياض. بعد ما سمعنا التحدي من الأخ وائل عرض علينا اللي هو الليد سلاج ويست، طلبنا منها الكيميكال اناليسيز. أثناء التحليل اتضح أن وجود نسبة حديد وكالسيوم وسيليكا، ومن خلال ذلك كنا نبحث عن شريك معنا يفي معنا بالوعد والحل. وجدنا الأخوان الله يعطيهم العافية من اسمنت الرياض، وأثناء تعاوننا معهم وجدنا فرصة لاستخدامه. باختصار هذا الموديل حقنا، هذا الويست الناتج من مصنع رصاص تحول إلى رو ماتيريال في مصنع اسمنت الرياض، وإن شاء الله تكتمل الدائرة ناخذ ويست من اسمنت الرياض ونحوله اللي هو البطاريات نحولها از رو ماتيريال في مصنع رصاص. باختصار المبادرة هذه حققت أكثر من 9 من مستهدفات رؤية 2030، والتخلص من 7200 طن من الليد سلاج ويست بشكل آمن، من خلال توقيع مذكرة التفاهم في يوم 5/5/2025. والآن ما شاء الله بدوا في العملياتها، وبنستعرض النتائج إن شاء الله مع الأخ وائل والأخ ياسر بإذن الله. فتفضل معنا أخوي وائل.
يعطيك العافية. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يعطيكم العافية جميعا. رصاص من الشركات اللي قائمة أساسا على الريسايكلينج ايكونومي. من بداية الشركة عام 1992 تم التخلص من تقريبا 2,000,000 طن من سكراب البطاريات اللي تحتوي على الرصاص، وهذا يعتبر بيج اشيفمنت للشركة. خلينا نقول انه في بعض العقبات اللي كانت تواجهنا خلال رحلة عمل الشركة من البداية إلى ما وصلنا لها اليوم. الشركة كان عندها مبدأ recycling scrap battery which contained lead and produce lead element or lead metal. المشاكل اللي كانت تواجهنا من التكنولوجي في البداية كانت البدايات متواضعة، فكان عندنا الريسايكلينج كنسبة مئوية تقريبا 66% من سكراب البطاريات يتم تدويرها بشكل آمن، و44% يعتبر كويست. أكبر مشكلة كانت تواجهنا هي 2 من المشاكل اللي هي السلفريك أسيد اللي موجود في البطارية هذا كان لازم يكون في عندنا RO بلانت وووتر تريتمنت بلانت على اساس اننا نقدر نسوي ريسايكلينج للووتر، وينتج لنا ايضا كالسيوم سولفيت سلج بعد المعالجه الكيميائيه للمياه او للسلفريك اسيد. هذا ولد لنا two source of sludge. One is the lead slag and the second one is the sludge that is going out from the water treatment. We implement a crystallization unit, and with cooperation with SABIC, we are using caustic soda and producing a byproduct called sodium sulfate, which is consumed in glass companies and detergent companies. So we solve 20% from it, and we reach 86%. Second challenge, it was the lead slag. It's coming out, and during my participation in last year Knowledge Month, I meet Engineer Faisal, and we discussed the challenge that we have. One of it was the slag disposal that we are producing, and we was in different meetings discussing this issue, and we find some solutions. One of it is to recycle it with a cement company. As international study, a lot of companies around the world, they are recycling the lead slag in cement company. They are using it as a raw material. Engineer Faisal Al-Fardan, he start the communication with different companies, and one of the big corporation, and thank you to Riyadh Cement, they participate in this one, and we conduct a lot of meetings. We share with them the samples of the slag. They make the test, and they approve to start with a trial order. And we deliver to them some quantity. They try it. They find it successfully. Then we start the regular delivery to them. We signed the contract and the MOU. In 2026, we will supply them with 7,200 tons of lead slag. And from the beginning of the signing the contract with them, we are very glad to announce that we recycle about 1,560 tons up to the beginning of November, and we expect to close the year with around 2,500 tons. This is the beginning of this cooperation. So for us, in National Lead Smelting Company, we are trying our best to improve the recycling cycle. The lead slag, it was the biggest challenge, as the environment impact, because what we was doing, as Mr. Engineer Faisal said, we are dumping it in the landfill, and landfill, they have to treat it, then they have to dispose it. And this disposal, it cannot be 100% safe. It have to be, there is some remaining in it. So it's very risky and very hazard. We are very happy to achieve this one and completing this cycle. After recycling slag, our recycling percentage is increased from 86% to 94%. The remaining is 4%, and we are working closely with Riyadh Cement to complete the 100%. If we complete the 100%, we will be the first company in the kingdom and in the GCC that they are achieving this number. Most of the companies, they are not achieving more than 80% due to the sulfuric acid treatment, or let's say disposing it. So we are very happy to achieve the 94%. And thank you very much. I would like to ask my colleague, Mr. Yasser, to present. Thank you, Yasser.
طبعا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أسعد الله صباحكم. First of all, I would like to thank my previous speaker for their interested information. And I hope you will be a little bit patient with me, because I'm going to go you through the journey and to explore with you a lot of the information. So we will start. I think the easiest way from Engineer Faisal and Wael, they find only the guy who can take care for the waste. So you need to be a little bit patient with me, because I'm going to explain to you how we are dealing with this waste until we enter into the product of the cement. First of all, allow me to give you little bit brief about Riyadh Cement Company. Riyadh Cement Company was foundation in 1997 as a Saudi white cement company, and then it was going to the commercial production in 2001 with a capacity of almost 230,000 tons. And then the company was decided to build the second line, which is mainly for the gray cement. We are talking about almost the capacity for that 1.7 millions. In 2007, the company decided to invest and to build the second line for the gray cement with a production capacity 1.7. So the total will be almost 3.4 millions in terms of cement, gray cement. In 2019, the company would like to invest more, and we will convert one of the gray cement to be doable production line. It was producing white cement company with the capacity 1 million ton per year. In 2022, company was decided to re-innovate or redesign their logo and renewal their reputation, rebranding their design, branding the logo. And to 2023, we moved from Nemo market to the main market share in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And in 2025, we will be proud because it was nominated from the industrial to be in the Lighthouse program. And we expect it, inshallah, in 2027, we will be finished, 27 years, to finish that program. Our vision mainly to achieve why we are take care for this, because the vision of the Riyadh Cement Company was concentrate about the sustainability and all this element, which is part from the vision of 2023. If you see exactly the achieve of the excellence and sustainability of the cement industry to the first choice. When we talk about the mission, we are talking about providing the variety of the high quality and environmentally friendly product cement to meet our customer. When we are talking about our value, innovation, creativity, and quality improvement. The main pillar in this vision, it will be cascading to 5 almost pillars: sustainability, growth, and operational excellence, and human capital, and digital transformation. Why you are selecting Riyadh Cement Company? Because we are located in centralized of the region, first of all. We are providing a robust financial performance, production flexibility. We are also only the company in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia having one dedicated production line for the white cement, not comparing like other. We are talking about the quality and sustainability also as one from our DNA, and also set of art of technology. We are using the latest technology for the producing cement. And the last one, the competitive pricing edge. So if you are interested to buy cement, you can contact me. Riyadh Cement Company producing almost 5 types of cement. We are talking about the first one, which is the OPC, which is using for the infrastructure, different application. The second one, we are talking about the finishing cement. The third one, we are talking about the SRC cement. And in the white cement company, we are producing 2 types of the white cement. When we go to the real moment of the truth, why we are going to the slag, because first of all, the sustainability objective in our company to focus in almost 5 pillars or 5 category. We are focusing about the health and safety to make sure our team, they are working in the safe environment and providing with the right conditions, and climate and change and energy, which is already highlighted by my previous speaker. Also one from our objective in Riyadh Cement Company to focus about the climate as well. The third point, we are talking about the corporate and social responsibility, one from our major activity or KPI, and then we are talking about the environment as well, and then culture, economical as well. Riyadh Cement Company, we expect it within a couple of months, inshallah, we're going to be announced the sustainability report. Riyadh Cement Company, we decided, as you know, there is a different scope of work in sustainability in ESG. Riyadh Cement Company has decided to go for the extreme one to implement all the scope of work related to the ESG, including also the supply chain. If you see that in environment, we are focused about the operation management and high machinery utilization and focus on excellence, continuity, improvement, and supply chain excellence and decarbonization effort. In social responsibility, we're talking about public relation and HR and admin and effort. In governance, we are talking about the IT governance and public relation and supply chain as well, and the finance. For those people, they don't know about the cement company. If you allow me to take you flying or during the journey, how the processing of the cement. For those people, they don't know about the cement production. It's mainly dependent on the mining activity. It is starting from the quarry when we are blasting the major material in the cement, which is the limestone, and then we will move it through the crushing. We crush it, and then we are mix it with the raw mill and grinding this material, and then we preheat it, and after that we put it inside the kiln with the almost 1,450 for the rotary kiln, and then after that we will cooling this material. Once we're cooling, it will be again grinded, and then it go to the, as you see in the picture, for the packing and storing, and it will be in the final product. When Mr. Faisal and Mr. Wael, they are communicating with us, we find a lot of opportunity because their waste, it can help us to improve the quality of the cement product, and it can be utilized as one from our raw material or additives. So by adding this material, we will going to improve the enhancing and the cement quality, and environmentally, we're going to help the organization also as the government. After we did the research and collaboration with Mr. Wael and Mr. Faisal from SIDF, and lead slag utilization can enhance, as I explained, the cement workability, and environmentally, there is also reduce of the environment waste, because instead of land dump filling, we're going to inject it in our cement material, which we're going to produce the final product. طبعا definitely it's going to help us in terms of cost saving as well, and by the end of the day, green investment in the green environment. I'm going to take you exactly how the material actually is coming. This is the slug that's coming to us in our plant, and then we dump it to our crusher, as I explained to you, and then this is the final stage of taking the waste of the material and then engage it with our raw mill mix design. It's become as a final product. And again, we promise Mr. Wael, inshallah, they have almost 4%. So we will hope, inshallah, we'll finalize it soon. So thank you. This is what I have in my time, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all our speakers for their insightful presentation. We have a code for a video to scan if you would like to watch later about the initiative. And before moving on to our next segment, if there is any question to be asked to the speakers, we would like to welcome Mr. George for our final presentation for today, Chief Commercial Officer at Gulf Cryo Group, whom will present the full carbon dioxide value chain, starting from capture and to utilization. We will also speak about the company's work in hydrogen mobility and clean energy solutions. Thank you, Mr. George.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning to all. I will speak in English. I've been for 10 years here in the region, and I hope, inshallah, next time I can present in Arabic. I would like to thank SIDF for giving us the opportunity to present Gulf Cryo's initiative in forming a sustainable industrial future. It's moving. Gulf Cryo has a strong presence in the region and is market leader for industrial gases and medical gases supplies and production. We have a long history of more than 70 years, and we are the first gas company operating in the GCC countries, employing more than 1,500 strong employees with high industry knowledge and expertise. And we participate actively for the last more than 15 years in the energy transition journey, industry decarbonization, acting as an integrator between the companies and creating a clean circular economy based on carbon management. We produce more than 4,000 metric tons of air gases per day, daily, in more than 11 air separation plants in the region. We're operating at the moment 4 mega CO2 recovery plants in the region, with recovering and capturing more than 1,300 metric tons daily. And we supply all industrial segments, from medical, petrochemical, refineries, food and beverage, and any industry that you can think of. And how we do that? We supply the industries with our extensive transportation fleet, and we operate more than 1,000 rolling assets in the whole region. However, in this event, I would like to present our engagement in transforming CO2 emissions, CO2 waste, recovered from the industry to a valuable resource for the industry. And we all heard about the CCUS, the carbon capture, utilization and storage, and its contribution to the carbon neutrality in the region. How do we achieve that? How do we achieve carbon neutrality? First of all, we convert fossil fuel burning plants in the industry, and we supply them with liquid CO2, desalination plants, petrochemical plants, food industry and beverage, and I will explain later the different opportunities and application. We retrofit existing fossil fuel-based power industries, and mainly hard-to-abate industries, cement and steel. But mainly we upscale downstream utilization and applications, converting CO2 into a valuable resource for the industry. And this is, recently we started also the low carbon hydrogen initiative, which supports the whole sustainability agenda for the country. How does Gulf Cryo showcase a successful sustainable CO2 utilization? We are the first mover and the pioneer in carbon capturing, and we cover the whole CO2 value chain. We make local investments, and I will show you later. We operate the investments, we operate the plants, and we create demand and CO2 utilization by introducing new technologies through strategic technological association and partners. In 2026, we will operate 5 mega CO2 plants, recovery plants, which will recover more than 1,300 metric tons daily. This is over 500,000 metric tons annually. And by 2030, we have a plan to recover up to 1.5 million metric tons per day, per year. All this product will be dedicated for utilization. Here we're talking about carbon capture utilization. We have not gone yet in the CCS, which is the carbon capture and storage path. I would like to present the mega plants that we have in the region. The path started already in 2014. This was even before the Paris Agreement, where the group initiated the first investment in Kuwait, capturing more than 300 metric tons CO2 emissions from the MEG plant, ethylene glycol plant of Kuwait. Then we moved later on into the investment in Saudi Arabia, where we installed also the next mega plant of 300 plus metric tons per day in the Petro-Rabigh facility, recovering all the emissions from the MEG plant of Petro-Rabigh. And we signed in the COP27 the biggest carbon capture plant that is going to be operating in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the inauguration is going to be end of the year, beginning of 2026. And this is the biggest plant covering up to 950 metric tons per day. However, I would like to mention also the last one, the project that we started in UAE. This is a reference project because here we capture for the first time, and I think it's a reference globally, we capture for very low emissions stream, raw gas stream, we capture CO2, which has a totally different technology than the other examples. What is the value chain? What is the CO2 value chain? Carbon capture, and of course, then the utilization. And you see where it can be utilized. Of course, the EOR, which has been done for the last years in Saudi Arabia. Synthetic fuels, we are talking also about e-fuels. Seawater desalination plants, the country is investing in. Every month we have a new seawater desalination plant starting in the region. Of course, food processing, agriculture, greenhouses, building materials, and other applications. Some examples. Agriculture. We inject CO2 into the greenhouses. We have already 4 major installations in the kingdom where we support and we increase the food security, food safety, food quality. Approximately 25 kilograms CO2 for every 1,000 square meters of greenhouse. Desalination in the kingdom is a big utilization area where CO2 is injected for pH control and for remineralizing the water into the drinking water. 35 kilograms of CO2 are injected per 1,000 cubic meters of water. And concrete, we heard about cement, we heard today a lot about cement. We're injecting in concrete, ready-mix blocks, where we reduce by 7% the cement. And this has every cubic meter of concrete has an avoidance of 15 kilograms CO2. And 1 kilogram of CO2 is stored in 1 cubic meter of concrete. And you can imagine how many cubic meters are produced yearly and annually in the kingdom where we can sequestrate the CO2. We have already 5 installations in the region. We have installations in the area of Neom, and we have installations also in the area of in the eastern region of the kingdom and in UAE. Here we have the traditional applications, which is enhanced oil recovery. We inject CO2 to recover the gas and the oil, avoiding to introduce water in the underground, in subsurfaces. And of course, we have the traditional food processing, food freezing, the cold transportation, and the carbonization of beverages. Gulf Cryo can manage all technologies for carbon capture. And depending on the concentration of CO2 in the raw gas stream, we can implement different technologies. We start from 99% in MEG plants, ethylene oxide plants, and we go down to 3% and below that in the flue gases in the combustion area. these are our current plants which we operate today. We capture from 2 ethylene oxide plants with high concentration, the ammonia plants of Ma'aden cement industry. We signed last week with Holcim Lafarge, we signed an MOU to capture emissions and reintroduce it, reutilize it, and of course combustion, which I showed before in the RAK ceramics in UAE. What are the challenges? And there are challenges, but however, there are also opportunities. Number one, we still have energy subsidies for utilities, for natural gas, even for kerosene in the kingdom and in the region. We still have CO2 fossil fuel production plants, mainly in desalination, but also in beverage. We managed to convert in the last 5 years, based on our production, we managed to convert more than 15 and stop burning fossil fuel plants by supplying low carbon captured CO2. There is a lack of environmental regulations and implementation. We are lacking green financing. There are a lot of discussions, but there still is underdeveloped in the region, and we need partnerships for successful management of carbon. Last is a lack of technologies for carbon capture of low concentration, hard to abate industries, cement, steel mainly, and aluminium. We have opportunities. CCU is the main opportunity, where we convert from CO2 waste a valuable source for the industry. And of course CCS, which is at the starting phase, announced by Aramco, capturing more than 40 million metric tons and sequestrating depleted oil and gas fields. We need to identify CO2 hubs where we have the point of source capture, but also attract investments for utilization. There are hubs in Yanbu that are at development. There are hubs in Jubail under development. We develop currently Ras Aher, a CO2 hub for utilization, and of course, more clusters are coming up. And what we're doing is stimulating the CO2 demand, stimulating the utilization of captured CO2 in the region by R&D, research and development, and different pilot projects. And where do we do that? We're investing in a new application and technology center in Spark, the energy park of Aramco, in cooperation with Aramco. This is going to be the first application and technology center that will bridge applied research and utilization, and of course commercialization of new technologies. We will develop technologies that are in the pilot phase, a TRL of up to 4. We develop them to 8 and 9, and then bring it in the industries, implement it in the industries. Direct air capture is something that is coming into the application center. We have already HRS, is the hydrogen refuel station for hydrogen mobility, and of course sustainable building materials pilots for developing sustainable building materials in cooperation with partners, technologies and industries. It's a 90,000 square meters land that is under development, and is going to attract technology partners and also industries. We invite everybody that would like to join us. We have signed with Aramco. We have signed with the leading research center in Germany, Fraunhofer Institute. We're in discussion with SABIC. We're in discussion with the opinion leaders and decision makers in the kingdom. And I would like to say a few words about the hydrogen, the path that we are developing in Saudi Arabia. For clean mobility, we dream about the stations, the hydrogen stations that are going to be across the kingdom, and trucks and buses can be refueled and run with clean hydrogen. low carbon hydrogen, and off-grid decentralized power networks where we introduce low carbon CO2 for the industry. I would like to thank you, and I would like to join us in this path, and let's form the partnerships that really needed in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Thank you. Stay for questions. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. George, for such an interesting presentation. والآن ننتقل إلى الفقرة الأخيرة لهذا اليوم، وهي جلسة حوارية سيديرها الزميل عبد العزيز الدريهم، مستشار منع الخسائر في الصندوق الصناعي. ضيوف الجلسة الدكتور محمد الصرف، مدير عام شركة تلاد للاستدامة البيئية ورئيس مجلس إدارة جمعية محترفي الاستدامة. الأستاذ أحمد الشمري، نائب الرئيس التنفيذي للاستدامة في شركة غازكو. الدكتورة غالية النصيري، مدير إدارة التشجير في البرنامج الوطني للتشجير. ندعو ضيوفنا للانضمام للمنصة.
السلام عليكم. حياكم الله جميعا في جلسة اليوم بعنوان نحو مستقبل صناعي مستدام. أرحب بالضيوف الكرام والحضور والأعزاء المتابعين خلف الشاشات. في جلسة اليوم نحاول أن نفهم أهمية الانتقال من الامتثال البيئي إلى الاستدامة البيئية، مع استعراض بعض النماذج من واقع القطاع الصناعي، وكذلك نتطرق لبعض التحديات التي تواجهها الشركات في هذا التحول، وأيضا نسلط الضوء على البرنامج الوطني للتشجير، دوره في القطاع الخاص وجهوده في حماية البيئة. أبدأ أولا معك دكتور محمد. ما الذي يدفع أو يشجع المستثمر أو صاحب المنشأة ألا يكتفي بالالتزام البيئي والامتثال، بل يبادر ويخطو نحو الاستدامة البيئية؟
طيب، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أولا أشكركم على الاستضافة وعلى هذا اللقاء الجميل. صراحة يعني نحتاج حنا مثل هذه اللقاءات بكثافة في انتقالنا حاليا مع رؤية المملكة 2030 إلى التنمية المستدامة. إجابة على سؤالك، حقيقة حنا في مرحلة، وزي ما شفنا من البرزنتيشنز اليوم، يعني في مرحلة انتقالية جذرية، إنه ما عاد صار الامتثال البيئي هو الكافي. يعني صار الامتثال البيئي هو المينيمم ريكويرمنت لأداء أي عمل، لأداء أي صناعة، لبناء أي مشروع وخلافه. فالتأسيس موجود، والامتثال البيئي الآن يعني وصل إلى مرحلة إنه ما عاد صار عبء على الشركات أو على الجهات، صار يعني مطبق وصار سهل الوصول له، وصار في شركات ما شاء الله تبارك الله بتقدم الخدمات البيئية بشكل جودة عالية وبأسعار تنافسية. الآن الفكرة أنه انتقلت هذه الفكر في الشركات إلى ما بعد الامتثال البيئي وإلى تطبيقات الاستدامة. زي ما شفنا اليوم في تقارير وفي مبادرات من عدة شركات للامتثال في الحوكمة والاستدامة والخدمة المجتمعية بشكل عام. فانتقلنا من مرحلة الالتزام البيئي وتحقيق الشروط الأدنى إلى ما بعد هذه الخطوات في المثال من ناحية ESG مثلا تقارير الاستدامة الإفصاح وخلافه. الآن احنا في مرحلة إنه إلى أي حد نبغى نوصل في الاستدامة. ما شاء الله شفنا مثلا في اسمنت الرياض يعني جهودهم ما شاء الله يعني يشكرون عليها في هذه الجهود، إنه يعني ما طبقوا المينيمم ESG ستاندردز، لا يهدفون إلى أعلى الستاندردز. فحنا وصلنا إلى مرحلة الحمد لله الوعي متكامل، الوعي صار يعني سهل الوصول له في المملكة. فتطبيقات ما بعد الامتثال أنا أشوف إنه حنا عدينا هذه المرحلة، وصلنا إلى مرحلة الآن إلى أي حد أنت تبغى توصل في الاستدامة. فكنا نتكلم يعني ممكن 5 سنوات الماضية ممكن بس نعرف إيش تعريف الاستدامة. اليوم حنا ما شاء الله نتكلم في ما بعد الاستدامة بأهداف ESG، إلى أي مدى تبغى توصل في الامتثال. يعني وصلنا إلى مرحلة فعلا الواحد في مجال الاستدامة يفرح بمثل هذه الإنجازات وهذه طموح المملكة والقيادة الرشيدة للمملكة. فأنا يعني أحيي الجميع اللي شفنا برزنتيشنز اليوم لهم. والقطاع الصناعي يعني ما يخفى عليكم من أكبر القطاعات المؤثرة في البيئة وفي المناخ. يعني على حسب بعض الإحصاءات في إنتاج الطاقة للصناعة قد تصل إلى 50% من الانبعاثات الكربونية. فيعني هدفنا في هذا المجال بالذات في قطاع الصناعة أن نوصل إلى مرحلة ما بعد الامتثال.
جميل جدا. ممكن أفضل تأكيد للكلام اللي ذكرته أن نأخذ مثال عملي من أحد النماذج في القطاع الصناعي، مصنع غاسكو. ممكن يعطونا أحد الأمثلة والمبادرات اللي مروا فيها من الامتثال إلى المبادرات في الاستدامة البيئية. مهندس أحمد ممكن تحدثنا عن دور غاسكو في هذا الموضوع؟
الله يحييك وشكرا على الاستضافة. طبعا غاسكو على مدى 60 عام الماضية كانت شركة تشغيلية معنية في تخزين وتوزيع الغاز لمختلف مناطق المملكة لمختلف الشرائح من العملاء سواء الأفراد أو الشركات أو المشاريع الضخمة اليوم تعيشها المملكة. طبعا غاسكو أطلقت استراتيجية مؤخرا، استراتيجية تركز على تحول الشركة من شركة تشغيلية إلى شركة استثمارية في مجال الطاقة. نتيجة هذه الاستراتيجية أطلقنا 6 شركات تابعة، كل شركة معنية في مجالها. في تخزين، الشركة الأولى كان اسمها خزين، معنية في تخزين وتعبئة الغاز اللي هو الليكويد بتروليوم غاز، اللي هو طبعا بحد ذاته قد المعلومة هذه يجهلها العديد من الأشخاص أو الأفراد، أنه الغاز البترول المسال هو أحد مصادر الطاقة النظيفة، لأن لا يوجد له أي انبعاثات ثاني أكسيد الكربون، نسبة احتراقه تكون 100%، فبالتالي هو يعتبر أحد مصادر الطاقة النظيفة. فهذه المبادرة كانت يعني أحد أهم الأهداف استراتيجيتنا. الشركات الأخرى كانت معنية بدعم التشين كاملة من توزيع واللوجستيك آرم إلى التحول الرقمي، بالإضافة إلى تعزيز مبدأ الاستدامة وفرض بيس لاين بعد اكتشاف البيس لاين الخاص بالنسب المفروضة لتقليل انبعاثات ثاني أكسيد الكربون في مجالاتنا التشغيلية أو سواء كانت في محطاتنا أو على مستوى النقل كذلك. أبرز التحديات المراحل اللي عشناها من تقليل الانبعاثات الكربونية في مجال الغاز. رقم 1 كنا نركز دائما على رفع الوعي أنه الغاز فعلا هو مصدر طاقة نظيف لا يوجد لديها أي انبعاثات ثاني أكسيد الكربون. رقم 2 في مجالاتنا التشغيلية التزمنا دائما بمعايير دولية. على سبيل المثال في القطاع اللوجستي علشان أوصل لجميع شرائح العملاء في مختلف المناطق لابد أن يكون عندي فليت أو أسطول لنقل الغاز، بحكم أنه مادة تحتاج النقل بحذر بمعايير معينة للسلامة. فالناقلات هذه تتميز بستاندرد عالمي اسمه يورو 3. يورو 3 هو مختلف عن أي شاحنة ممكن احنا نشوفها في الطرقات، فبالتالي نسبة الانبعاثات اللي تنقل هالغاز هذا تكون أقل من أي ترك ممكن احنا نراها للنقل الاعتيادي في طرقات المملكة. رقم 2 أيضا ركزنا على إطلاق منتجات صديقة للبيئة. متعارف عليه، احنا الاسطوانات موجوده في كل مطبخ، احنا موجودين ترى في كل منزل باي ذا واي. فعاده متعارف عليه الاسطوانات اللي هي اللي يجي لونها اورنج الحديد. بينما اطلقنا مؤخرا منتج اخر اللي هي الفايبر جلاس، اللي هي الماده الاساسيه لها اساسا صديقه للبيئه، حملها او وزنها لنقل الاسطوانه نفسها اخف، فبالتالي لما يقل الوزن تقريبا أكثر من 70% من الوزن التقليدي ونقلها من منطقة إلى أخرى راح يقلل من استهلاك الوقود، وبالتالي تقل انبعاثات ثاني أكسيد الكربون.
بالإضافة يمكن العملية التصنيعية بين الفايبر جلاس والستيل،
صحيح،
الاسطوانة التقليدية.
وهنا عاد نحتاج دعمكم الصندوق احنا بهالموضوع هذا
بإذن الله. هذه يعني أحيانا الفرص وبعض التحديات تخلق فرص استثماريه صحيح. في السبلاي تشين، وتعزز الاستدامه السبلاي تشين في المنظومه صحيح. بدل ما انا اورد بعض المنتجات مثلا من الصين ولا من خارج المملكه تكون موجوده عندي واخلق وظائف يعود يعني اثرها على الاقتصاد.
طبعا بس مداخله بسيطه على هالنقطه هذه تحديدا، احنا الان في مرحله تعاون مع صندوق التنميه الصناعي. الان اسطوانات الفايبر الرو ماتيريال تصنع من سابك، من ثم يتم شرائها من قبل شركات صينيه، فيصنعونها لنا بمواصفات معينة مطابقة لمواصفاتنا وساس وكذلك، ومن ثم ناخذها احنا منهم جاسكو مرة أخرى ونبيعها في السوق السعودي. الآن المبادرة مع الصندوق بإذن الله أننا يكون عندنا مصنع سعودي للفايبر جلاس بمختلف الأحجام، بحيث أنه يكون أحد أيضا مبادرات اللوكال كونتنت.
جميل جدا. أعتقد عندكم بعد واحدة من المبادرات في التشجير إذا ماني غلطان.
صحيح، مبادرتنا مع محمية الملك سلمان. مؤخرا أطلقنا مبادرة مع محمية الملك سلمان، وبإذن الله راح نبدأ موضوع التشجير لأكثر من 100,000 شجرة في القريب العاجل بإذن الله. وقعناها وأعلنا عنها قبل تقريبا شهرين أو في الفترة هذه.
الله يوفقكم. وبالحديث يعني عن التشجير ودنا ننتقل للإطار الوطني في التشجير، البرنامج الوطني للتشجير. الدكتورة غالية ودنا تعطينا نبذة عن البرنامج، إيش مستهدفاته وجهوده في خفض الانبعاثات الكربونية والاستدامة البيئية.
حياكم الله جميعا واشكر لكم تحت الفرصة بهذه المشاركة. بالنسبة للبرنامج الوطني للتشجير، كلنا عارفين مبادرة سيدي صاحب السمو الملك الأمير محمد بن سلمان، مبادرة السعودية الخضراء التي أطلقت عام 2021. فجاء البرنامج هنا دوره تحت إشراف طبعا المركز الوطني لتنمية الغطاء النباتي ومكافحة التصحر، دوره يشرف على تحقيق مستهدفات السعودية الخضراء، واللي هي تشمل زراعة 10 مليار شجرة، وكذلك أو بما يعادل تأهيل 40 مليون هكتار. فهنا دور البرنامج الإشراف على الشركاء، الإشراف على العمليات التشجير، الإشراف على عمليات التأهيل وتقييمها وضمان استدامتها.
جميل. اللي بدورها أيضا بتضيف يعني الإخوان اللي ذكروها عرجوا عليها في الجلسة الأولى مستهدفات المملكة بالوصول للحياد الصفري
بالضبط عام 2060 بإذن الله. خاصة أن الآن مجال الصناعة ومجال البيئة ليسوا مجالين منفصلين، بل مكملين. بعض الشركين في بناء اقتصاد كربوني منخفض، كذلك مستقبل أخضر مستدام.
صحيح، أحسنتي. البرنامج يقع تحت مظلة مركز الغطاء النباتي ومكافحة التصحر.
صحيح.
وهو يعني جهة تنفيذية أو تسعى لتحقيق.
أيوة، دي جهة إشرافية تشرف على تحقيق مستهدفات السعودية الخضراء.
جميل جدا. ودي نرجع نتطرق لبعض التحديات اللي تواجهونها في قطاع التحول من الاستدامة من الامتثال للاستدامة. يعني مهندس أحمد، أنتم أكيد في رحلتكم هذه ما كانت رحلة سلسة. صحيح. وأكيد أنكم أنتم حتى في المبادرات الحالية اللي أنتم شغالين عليها في العديد من التحديات اللي تواجهونها، فإذا تعطينا نبذة عن التحديات أو الصعوبات اللي تواجهونها.
شوف أنا أخوك ولا يهون الأخوان، دائما أي مرحلة تغيير تعيشها منشأة لابد من التحديات، لابد من الأب أند داون. فمرحلة تحول، مرحلة استكشاف. طبعا تحول الشركة خلال السنة ونص الماضية كان بكل أمانة غير البوزيشننج كامل من شركة تشغيلية إلى شركة فاعلة في مجال الطاقة والاستثمار في مجال الطاقة. فهذا أعطانا وجهة نظر مختلفة، أننا فعلا we need to protect، ولا بالأصح أننا نحتاج أننا نعزز موقعنا الريادي في كشركة معنية بتزويد الغاز للمملكة بمختلف عملائها، سواء كانوا الأفراد أو الشركات أو الجيجا بروجكتس اللي اليوم نشاهدها. فهذا رقم واحد. رقم اثنين، أننا نساهم في تعزيز وتوسيع استثماراتنا في مجالات الطاقة الأخرى اللي قريبا راح يتم الإعلان إن شاء الله عن أكثر من مبادرة. فالتحديات، مجال الطاقة مجال متغير عالميا، فيحتاج أنك تكون أنت مرن وتصير فلكسبل على الأنظمة والقوانين، خصوصا أن أغلب المنتجات الطاقة اللي اليوم احنا نستفيد منها في المملكة العربية السعودية هي regulated prices، يعني أسعارها ثابتة ويتم مراجعتها من قبل الجهات التشريعية بشكل سنوي ويتم الإعلان عنها. فأنا ما أتحكم في السعر، هذا رقم واحد. رقم اثنين، التقنيات اللي موجودة في هالمجال هذا. ما يخفى على الجميع أنه اليوم أنا علشان يصير عندي efficiency عالية في عملية التوزيع وعملية النقل والوصول الغاز، سواء في السنتر في الرياض أو في جنوب المملكة، في أقصى نقطة في جنوب المملكة أو شمالها غربها وشرقها، لابد يكون عندي فعلا efficiency عالية في موضوع النقل. فالتقنية، تقنية مراقبة الحركة، تقنية مراقبة الحركة للحصول على أعلى كفاءة تشغيلية للنقل، فهذه جدا حساسة، والغرض منها تقليل الهدر أو تقليل الرحلات الغير ما تكون فيليا كوبايد. فبالتالي هذه جدا نقطة مهمة أننا فعلا نستفيد من التقنيات اللي اليوم بشكل دوري جالسة، كل يوم يطلع عندنا أبديت ويطلع عندنا استحداثات في هالمواضيع هذه أبرز التحديات. رقم ثلاثة، هو من ناحية الريسورسز والنولج ولله الحمد موجودة، يعني ما فيها مشكلة، ولكن الانتشار انه الغاز يعني لابد انه يصير متواجد في مختلف المناطق. فالموضوع يعني هو زي وقود السيارات، المحطات موجودة في كل مكان، فاحنا we need to be everywhere. فهذه هي النقاط الثلاثة اللي أبرز التحديات. بما يخص المبادرات، إذا سمحت لي أذكر مبادرة أطلقناها بداية العام، وذكرت الدكتورة غالية مبادرة السعودية الخضراء. طبعا زي ما يعرف الجميع في مبادرة السعودية الخضراء وفي مبادرة أيضا الشرق الأوسط الأخضر. صحيح. احنا كنا ولله الحمد بالتعاون مع وزارة الطاقة وبرنامج طلب الاستدامة على البترول الداعم الأساسي لمبادرة اسمها الطهي النظيف. الدول الأفريقية اليوم أو الدول النامية تعاني من موضوع الغاز سلندرز أو اسطوانات الغاز اللي احنا نستخدمها بشكل دوري، فعادة احنا نروح نغيرها ونستبدلها. دور الشركة تسوي لها مينتننس بشكل سريع وتعيد التعبئة وترجع تبيعها مرة ثانية للمستهلك. في الدول الأفريقية أو النامية لا، أنت لما تأخذ الاسطوانة فأنت تملكها، فتروح تعبي الاسطوانة وترجع تأخذها. عنصر الصيانة غير متواجد نهائيا، فبالتالي صار في ثقافة دارجة عند كثير من الأفراد في هالدول هذه أنه الأسطوانة هذه عبارة عن قنبلة موقوتة، فبالتالي صاروا يستخدمون الوقود التقليدي من سواء كان الحطب أو الفحم وإلى آخره، اللي يساعد على انبعاثات ثاني أكسيد الكربون، يأثر على موضوع الغطاء النباتي بشكل قوي في هذه الدول اللي تعتمد بشكل أساسي باقتصادياتها على الزراعة. فإحنا كأحد جهود المملكة البارزة اليوم بالتعاون مع برنامج الأويل سستينابيلتي بروجرام ووزارة الطاقة ساهمنا في دعم رفع التوعية في هالدول هذه. هذا رقم واحد، توزيع اسطوانات غاز تكون ملائمة لاحتياجاتهم، بالإضافة إلى مواد تشغيل الغاز الأخرى زي الأفران المصغرة وإلى آخره.
جميل جدا. المصنعين أو مختلف القطاعات يعني يواجهون مختلف التحديات، وبعضهم يحاول يعني يسوي اوفست للانبعاثات هذه من خلال عمليات التشجير، بس يجد صعوبة في التواصل مثلا مع البرامج الوطنية. فأنتم في برنامج التشجير دكتورة غالية كيف يعني وش التحديات أول شيء تواجهونها في إشراك مختلف القطاعات سواء قطاع عام أو قطاع خاص أو غير ربحي، وكيف ممكن تواجهون التحديات هذه؟ حدثينا بشكل عام عن شراكاتكم يعني مع
بالعكس، احنا الباب مفتوح للشراكات، وحنا نرحب، حنا نبحث عن هذه الشراكات لزيادة تنمية الغطاء النباتي في المملكة. لكن عندنا حنا تحدي كبير اللي هو نقص المياه. فحنا البرنامج يعمل على تعظيم الاستفادة من المياه الصرف الصحي المعالجة، كذلك تقنيات حصاد مياه الأمطار لاستخدامها في عمليات التشجير. فهي أحيانا يعني لما تجينا مشاركات أو مبادرات لازم نشوف قربها من مدى محطات المياه المعالجة ليتسنى استدامة هذه العملية، عملية التشجير اللي يقوم بها الشريك. بالنسبة للتحديات يعني هذه أبرز التحديات
صحيح.
اللي فعلا حنا نعاني منها. أما الشركاء ومبادراتهم بالعكس حنا نرحب فيها، وحنا نبحث عن مثل هذه الشراكات، وحنا نسعى لزيادة الغطاء النباتي وخاصة في مجال الصناعة. يعني حنا نسعى أن الشركات الصناعية تعوض البصمة الكربونية لها في المصانع عن طريق عملية التشجير.
صحيح.
لأن كلنا نعرف أن التشجير يخزن الكربون في ساق وأوراق النباتات، مما يقلل من عملية اللي هو الاحتباس الحراري.
ومعظم المصانع يكون عندهم أصلا راجع من المياه من
صحيح.
العملية التصنيعية،
الاستفادة من فائض المياه المستهلكة في عملية الصناعة. صحيح. وعلى طاري هذا الموضوع يعني احنا عندنا شراكة مع المنظومة الصناعية قيادة الوزارة عن زراعة 100 مليون زي ما تفضل الأخ 100 مليون شجرة للاستفادة من فائض المياه المستخدمة في المصانع. كذلك إعادة تأهيل المحاجر التعدين بعد الانتهاء من عملية التعدين، إعادة تأهيلها واستعادة الحياة فيها، إحياء الغطاء النباتي.
جميل جدا، جميل جدا. دكتور محمد، يعني من نظرتك أنت كخبير في مجال الاستدامة، وش أبرز التحديات اللي يواجهها سواء المستثمر أو المصنع في مختلف القطاعات، أو حتى المهني الممارس في المجال؟
طبعا زي ما ذكرت في البداية، يعني احنا نتكلم الآن عن الاستدامة، مواضيع اختلفت تماما سواء من التحديات أو من الفرص. لكن لا زال في بعض التحديات لا زالت مستمرة وحتظل مستمرة. من أهمها الوعي والاستيعاب الفعلي لجميع المبادئ اللي احنا نبغى نطبقها. زي ما ذكرت الدكتورة في القطاع النباتي على سبيل المثال، الآن غالب الشركات وغالب الجهات سواء حكومية أو خاصة تبغى تبادر في برنامج السعودية الخضراء. فعلى سبيل المثال عندنا الآن تعاون مع شركة الكهرباء لزراعة 5 مليون شجرة كجزء من مبادرة السعودية الخضراء. فهم كانت هذه مبادرتهم الأولى. أخذنا الفكرة إلى بعد أعلى من هذا، وقلنا لهم طيب 5 مليون شجرة هذه كيف نحولها إلى أصول اللي هي الكاربون كريدتس. فالآن احنا نواجه عائق كبير مع التنفيذ، الوعي. طيب انتم تبغون كاربون كريدتس، ما احنا فاهمين، يعني حتى لدرجه انه في احد الاشخاص قال لي وريني الكربون، ابغى اشوف الكربون، ما تقول لي كربون 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 ماني فاهم. فالفكره ممكن انها تكون احد اكبر المعوقات فعلا الاستيعاب والوعي. فهذه يعني هي عائق وفرصه في نفس الوقت، انه يعني مثل هذه الملتقيات توسع المعرفه والادراك. من اكبر العوائق برضو الاستثمار، جلب الاستثمار. ففي غالب الشركات الان مثلا في سيتي سكيب في القطاع العقاري مثلا، اللي راح معرض سيتي سكيب بيشوف انه اغلب الشركات صارت تتكلم عن الاستدامه ويطبقون بناء نظام البناء المستدام، نظام الليد وخلافه. لكن في عائق كبير من ناحيه الاستثمار. طيب انا مهتم كمطور عقاري اني اطبق شهاده الليد. روشن على سبيل المثال، البحر الاحمر من اكبر المطبقين لهذه الانظمه الاستدامه. لكن فيها يعني من اكبر العوائق الاند يوزر او المستخدم النهائي، انا وانت والباقيين، يعني اللي حندفع التكاليف الاضافيه ذي. ففيه عائق الاستثمار وعائق الربح، انه متى بيكون عندي ريتيرن اوف انفستمنت اللي باخذه. فهذه ممكن انها تكون اكبر عائقين اشوفها في السوق المحلي. لذلك نفس العوائق تكون فرص لتوسعه نطاق المعرفه، سواء كانت عن طريق يعني منظمات زي صندوق التنمية وبقية الجهات، هيئة السعودية للمهندسين، هيئة السعودية للمقاولين، هيئة العامة العقار، ويعني بقية الجهات المعنية. أيضا أنه يكون في تعاون على تذليل العقوبات من ناحية التشريعات. الآن واحدة من النيجاتيفز أو السلبيات في الوعي أنه قد تكون المملكة والتشريعات موجودة تسهل تطبيقات الاستدامة، لكن أنا كمصنع مثلا أو كمستثمر ماني عارف كيف أوصل أو كيف أستفيد من هذه الفرص. لما تنظر لها من جميع النواحي فيه نقص معلومات من عدة جهات. أنا أشوف أنه من أكبر العوائق والفرص نفس الوقت أنه لازم يكون فيه التحالف والاتحاد لإيجاد منصة موحدة، أنه الجميع يعرف إيش الفرص المتاحة للاستثمار مثلا على سبيل المثال، لتسهيل الإجراءات في الحصول على تراخيص، الحصول على شهادات. نحتاج إلى برامج تحفيزية أكثر على أساس أنه أوكي أنا مستثمر أبغى أدخل في السوق السعودي، مستعد أدفع مليارات، لكن إيش العائد لي أنا كمستثمر سواء كان محلي أو دولي.
طبعا يعني نوه ان الاخوان في المركز الوطني للرقابه على الالتزام البيئي والاخوان في المركز الوطني لاداره النفايات مؤخرا يعني طرحوا العديد من الفرص الاستثماريه في موقعهم حسب المنطقه الاداريه، وفي نشاط وتوجه وتوسع كبير في المجال هذا لجذب المستثمرين. انك انت يا مستثمر عندك قدره ماليه بس مو عارف الفرص وين تحصلها او في اي منطقه مطروحه في الموقع الالكتروني، تدخل تحصل الفرص المناسبه وتقدر تتجه لها. ايضا موان المركز الوطني لاداره النفايات الان اطلقوا الشهر الماضي منصه يوديم، منصه معنيه بتقليل انتاج النفايات، التدوير والاسترداد، الابتكار الدائري، وايضا التوعيه والمعرفه. صراحه انصح الجميع الدخول للموقع والاطلاع عليه، يعني لتشجيع المستثمرين والمصنعين في يعني الاقتصاد الدائري والاستفاده من النفايات. لكن انا برجع لموضوع الاستدامه البيئيه والامتثال، يعني والسؤال موجه لك دكتور محمد وايضا مهندس احمد لو بتعلق. انا كمستثمر انا صاحب مصنع عندي تصريح بيئي، اموري طيبه، ممتثل، ليش يا اخي تخليني افكر باشياء يعني خارج الديلي اوبريشن اللي عندي؟
شوف، ممكن انا اعطيكم من خبرتي مع يعني والاخوان في الصندوق، يعني في ان شاء الله تكون مبادرات في هذا المجال، انه ايش بعد الامتثال؟ هل حتكون في زي ما ذكرت انا انه لازم يكون في برامج تحفيزيه وبرامج تمكين واعتراف. ممكن تكون يعني زي مثلا برنامج كفاءة الطاقة الآن، يعني عندك ريتنج سيستم، عندك ممتاز سيء وكذا، في نفس الشيء في السيارات وخلافه، هي التزام لكن في نفس الوقت اعتراف انه انا كشركة مصنعة انا عندي المنتجات الاسمنت مثلا على سبيل المثال، انه ماخذ مثلا جريد A في طبعا هذا كله في نهاية المطاف انا حستثمر نفترض 5 7 10% اساس اني احصل على هذه الاعترافات. لكن في النهاية عندي سوق عقاري مثلا على سبيل المثال في الصناعة في هذا يعني كبير جدا، يعني من هنا إلى 2035 بطبيعة الحال يعني فل لود شغال من مصانع بشكل عام، سواء كانت في القطاع العقاري الصناعي التجاري. ففرصتنا الآن أنه يعني كمصانع وكجهات تجارية وخلافه، أنه كيف ممكن أبرز نفسي أنا عن السوق. ليش؟ لأنه فيه إقبال كبير الآن، يعني مثلا على منتجات البناء، مواد البناء على سبيل المثال، عندنا الإكسبو جاي، عندنا كأس العالم، يعني عندنا يعني إقبال كبير، حيكون يعني طفرة عمرانية. فهذا الوقت اللي أنا أفكر فيه كمستثمر أو كمصنع أو خلافه، إني كيف أبرز نفسي عن هذا السوق. فهي المرحلة الآن احنا نتكلم كاش، تبغى كاش، فرصتك الآن أنك تبرز وتطلع يعني فعلا تستفيد من هذا الموضوع.
صحيح. سمحت لي أنا بعلق بالإضافة لكلام الدكتور المميز وطرحه الجميل. طبعا الامتثال في الاستدامة هي اختصارها بكل بساطة الامباكت على البشر والامباكت على البيئة. simple as this. رقم واحد، احنا اليوم كشركات وطنية أو كمستثمرين وطنيين وكشركات سعودية وأفراد ولا أشخاص ولا وش ما كان تشكيلنا، هذا واجب علينا وطني تجاه البلد اللي احنا نعيش فيه، واجب علينا أيضا تجاه الأجيال القادمة اللي راح يجون بعدنا ويستمتعون بالإنجازات اللي اليوم جالسة تصير في المملكة. رقم اثنين، من ناحية التكلفة، أنا لما يصير عندي الموارد الأساسية اللي من خلالها أنتج سواء كان أسمنت أو أي مادة أخرى تكون ريسايكلد وتكون هي ويست وحولتها إلى منتج يستفيد منه المجتمع، هذه افشنسي عالية وهذه بروفيت أعلى لي وليس كوست أساسا، أقل تكلفة. الويست دائما أقل تكلفة على المستثمر، وإذا كانت جودة المنتج بنفس الجودة المتعارف عليها، فبالتالي هذه مور بروفيت لي أنا كصاحب منشأة أو مستثمر في هالمجال هذا. فهي تسوين وين سيتويشن. رقم واحد وبالأساس I believe أنه واجب علينا جميعا أن يكون عندنا هالامتثال هذا والالتزام هذا تجاه بلدنا وتجاه الأجيال القادمة فيما بعد، وهي أساسا يعني تقاطعات مع رؤية المملكة، مستهدفات رؤية المملكة، وكذلك مع الاس دي جي اللي هي السستينبل ديفلوبمنت جولز كذلك اللي مطروحة من قبل اليو ان.
جميل. أعتقد يعني بالحديث عن التحديات والفرص ممكن هذا ياخذنا لمحور البحث والابتكار، والسؤال يعني أتركه للجميع: إلى أي مدى الابتكار والبحث ممكن يساهم في تعزيز الاستدامة البيئية، وما هي نوع الابتكارات أو التوجه اللي ممكن إحنا نشوفه في المستقبل؟
أتكلم بالنسبة للبحث والابتكار، يعني في حال أنه استخدمت في الطريقة الصحيحة أو التوجه الصحيح لبناء مثلا ابتكارات صديقة للبيئة، يعني على سبيل المثال أنه خلينا نقول تحسين أو عن طريق تربية النباتات في تحسين جودتها من حيث يعني مثلا زي امتصاصها للمياه يكون أقل، تحملها الملوحة تكون بدرجة عالية، كذلك قدرتها على المقاومة والاستدامة، مقاومة الظروف البيئية أنا أتكلم، كذلك مكافحة الأمراض والآفات، هذه بتكون بشكل حيوي بطريقة حيوية وغير كيميائية غير مضرة للبيئة أو دون الإضرار بالبيئة، وتكون صديقة فعلا للبيئة. هذه إن شاء الله يعني تحتاج عمليات بحث مستمرة، عمليات اطلاع، يعني دراسات، بإذن الله أنها تيجي مستقبلا.
صحيح. أعتقد في نماذج كثيرة احنا ممكن نطلع عليها يعني في موضوع البحث والابتكار، سواء من اللي شفناهم من اخوان الشباب اليوم في
وما شاء الله احنا شعب معطاء للامانه، وعندنا وشعب واعي، وعندنا امكانيات، وعندنا خبرات، وعندنا طاقات شبابيه ما شاء الله شغاله، ف يعني نعول عليهم ان شاء الله بكل خير من ناحيه البحث والابتكار. وحنا شفنا نجاحات المملكه في عديد من المجالات البحث والابتكار، وان شاء الله هذا نحققه بالمستقبل القريب.
صحيح.
ان شاء الله.
الصندوق في هاكاثون الصناعه اللي نظمها بشكل سنوي لثاني أو ثالث سنة على التوالي عنده مسار متخصص في مسار الاستدامة. يبحث عن التحديات اللي تواجه المصانع في موضوع الاستدامة البيئية، ويطرحها للمشاركين اللي حابين في مجال الابتكار والبحث. وطلعنا صراحة يعني هاي ثاني سنة على التوالي نطلع بحلول جميلة جدا في الاستدامة البيئية. أيضا وزارة البيئة والزراعة كان عندهم هاكاثون البيئة في نفس السياق تقريبا، لكن يمكن على نطاق أوسع، ومتأكد أن في العديد يعني من الحلول في موضوع الابتكار والبحث. يعني شبابنا صحيح. ما شاء الله فيهم الخير والبركة، صحيح. بالإضافة للكراسي البحث في الجامعات.
صحيح.
أنا إذا سمحت لي بعلق على النقطة بتجربة عشناها في غاسكو العام الماضي. احنا في غاسكو يعني غاسكو مرحلة التحول فرضت علينا عملية تغيير ضخمة، فالتغيير هو فيه جزء كبير من الابتكار. الابتكار احنا دائما نستفيد منه بالنقطة الأولى بالتمكين، تمكين الشباب زي ما تفضلت الدكتورة غالية، فركزنا على فئة الشباب وذن غاسكو داخل غاسكو. فسيميلر لهاكاثون الصناعة حصل عندنا داخل غاسكو، فطلعنا بحلول فعلا رفعت من الكفاءة، عززت من الاستدامة، بل زادت من ربحية بعض الأعمال في الشركة، بالإضافة إلى مشاركتنا الدائمة مع هاكاثون الصناعة وطرح فرص وتحديات مع الشباب السعودي. وما شاء الله فعلا يعني جتنا أكثر من فكرة وفازت وحصلت على جوائز خلال هاكاثون الصناعة، وبإذن الله راح ترى النور قريبا بإذن الله.
ما شاء الله جميل جدا. طبعا يعني دور التقنية والذكاء الاصطناعي له أهمية كبيرة، لكن والابتكار والبحث، لكن هذا ما يقلل أهمية الكادر البشري.
صحيح.
في هالمجال يعني له أهمية كبيرة، وما أدري يمكن عندنا نقص إحنا حاليا في القطاع هذا. فممكن دكتور محمد بحكمك أنك كنت رئيس مجلس إدارة جمعية محترفين السلامة تحدثنا عن أهمية صقل الكادر البشري في التخصص، وأنه هو تخصص يعني مهني مستقل وله مستقبل. دور مجال صقل الكادر البشري ودور الجمعية أيضا بشكل عام.
لا شك طبعا هو الاستثمار، الشركات دائما تفكر انه بستثمر انا في مشروع، بستثمر في مبنى، لكن حقيقة 90% من الاستثمار الواقعي يكون في البشرية، في الكادر البشري. فبناء على هذا يعني جمعية محترفي الاستدامة لما أسست كان مبدأها بناء على خبرتي في السوق أنه الناس دائما تحب تدور على معلومات، ما تحصل المعلومات بسهولة. أنا أيام بحث الدكتوراه قبل تقريبا 16 سنة يعني نادر كنت ألاقي معلومات، يعني كنت بالمجهر لأن ما حصل واحد. في نهاية المطاف كانوا المشرفين يقولون طيب دور مني حواليك، يعني في الإمارات، في قطر، في مصر وخلافه. فمن هذا المنطلق يعني أنا عانيت، فكانت هذه من أهداف الجمعية أنه نحاول نسهل وصول الناس للمعلومة. جاء على أثرها طيب كيف ندرب الناس أنه تكونوا محترفة في الاستدامة. طبعا احنا البرنامج أطلقناه اسمه برنامج سفراء الاستدامة، والحمد لله صار معتمد دوليا. فكرتنا أنه نعطي نبذة مختصرة عن الاستدامة من جميع القطاعات، فالمتخرج من هذا البرنامج خلاص يكون عنده وعي مثلا إيش الاستدامة في الصناعة، في الزراعة، في التجارة، في السياحة، في الدين حتى. يعني المبادئ الإسلامية أصلا هي مبنية، يعني الاستدامة أصلا جاية منبثقة من الدراسات الدينية. يعني إضافة على ذلك يعني في عندنا برامج توعوية كثيرة، في مثلا برنامج التوعية البيئية من وزارة البيئة والمياه والزراعة. أذكر برضو الأخوان في جمعية الاستدامة المؤسسية ما شاء الله برضو جهودهم تشكر في برنامج التأهيل الاستدامة الشامل. فالجهود يعني الحمد لله في أنا تغبطني الفرحة الكبيرة إنه فيه الآن برامج موجودة في المملكة لتوعية الكادر البشري، وصارت تجينا يعني طلبات حتى من الطلاب الابتدائي والمتوسط والثانوي. قبل أسبوعين كنا في ورشة عمل جهة تبع الأمم المتحدة جت من بريطانيا اسمها بيوند كوب 21. جمعوا تقريبا 6 مدارس بحدود تقريبا كان مشاركين 300 طالب في مرحلة الثانوية. كمية المعلومات اللي أنا تفاجأت إني شفتها عند الطلاب هذولي، يعني قلت إذا هذا الجيل عنده هذه المعلومات فإحنا في خير الحمد لله تبارك.
ما شاء الله.
فإذا هذا الهدف، فالآن الجيل الصاعد سهل نحن نوعي. الآن احنا نستهدف الفئات العليا، يعني السي سويت ليفل، مدراء الشركات، الرؤساء وخلافه. نعطيهم المعلومات بشكل مختصر بشكل بسيط الفهم، عن طريق يعني سواء كانت منصات التواصل الاجتماعي، بعض البودكاست المنتشرة. فالحمد لله المعلومات الآن صارت سهل الوصول لها.
صحيح. وفي كلامك يا دكتور الأسر دورها مهم جدا في الوعي والإدراك، تزرع في أبنائها اللي هي قيم لحب البيئة وحب الاستدامة وعدم العبث في ممتلكات البيئية، عدم العبث بالأشجار، عدم يعني زي ما احنا نشوف المنتزهات الآن الجهود كبيرة في المنتزهات في عمليات التشجير، لكن لازم يزرع بحب الأطفال حب هذه الشجرة، وكيف يعني كيف نبتت هذه الشجرة وكيف راح تصير بالمستقبل وكيف راح تساعدنا. هذه كلها لازم يعني تبنى عند الأطفال شيئا فشيئا حتى يعني يتأصل فيهم هذا المفهوم. الحاجة الثانية أنه أنا لا نغفل عن دور الجامعات في تقديم المبادرات سواء على مستوى المدارس أو على مستوى البيئة المجتمع المحلي، برامج توعوية حتى أنشطة ميدانية على أساس تغرس هذه القيم في أبناء الوطن.
صحيح. التأسيس والتربية يعني
بالضبط.
في المنزل شيء مهم، سلوك الطفل حتى لما يكبر هو يعرف.
بالضبط. والتربية سلوك.
صحيح.
يعني احنا الوالدين إذا احنا التزمنا وبينا حبنا للبيئة وبينا حبنا للشجرة وكيف نتعاون معها على أنها كائن حي أو نتعامل معها على كائن حي، يزرع هذا في الأطفال.
صحيح. صحيح.
ترى تعقيبا على هذه الكلمة، انحرجت أنا من أولادي مرة بالغلط كذا، رميت علبة موية، ولدي تقريبا عمره 8 سنوات جاني قال لي بابا مو انت دائما تتكلم الاستدامة وإعادة تدوير يعني تربية لا يعني بطريقة غير مباشرة استوعبوا انه هذا غلط. فالحمد لله والبرامج الآن موجودة في المملكة في المراحل الأولية. يعني في ثالث ثانوي مؤخرا اكتشفت انه في برنامج متكامل للتنمية والاستدامة يعطى للصف ثالث ثانوي، معطى من وزارة التعليم. فيعني الحمد لله في برامج كثيرة طيبة.
وأعقب على كلامه من باب الطرافة، عندي بعد طفلي أول ابتدائي لما اسقطت الورقة من أوراق الشجر خذاها وزرعها وجاني قال يما ادرسي عليها.
الله يحفظها يا رب.
الله يسلمك.
قبل ما نختم بس في نقطة أخيرة على البحث والابتكار حبيت بس أتطرق له. احنا في شركة تلاد الحمد لله أسسنا كرسي أبحاث مع جامعة الملك سعود باستثمار تقريبا 3 مليون ريال للدراسات البيئية والأثر التغير المناخي، فنرحب بأي تعاون في هذا الكرسي الأبحاث.
ما شاء الله تبارك الله. في الختام مدري أحد عنده تعليق أو إضافة قبل لا نختم؟ الله يعطيكم العافية. في ختام هذه الجلسة يعني أود نوجه بالشكر الجزيل للأخوة الكرام على الإثراء المعرفي اللي قدموه، وبرضو للحضور على الإنصات. الحقيقة يعني أخيرا يعني ودنا نقول أن الاستدامة ما هي رفاهية أو شكل تجميلي، بل هي ميزة تنافسية
ومطلب
وجزء أساسي في استمرارية تنافسية الأعمال. الله يعطيكم العافية. شكرا مجددا، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
شكرا عبد العزيز، شكرا للمتحدثين على الحوار المثمر. Thank you all. Thank you to all speakers, partners and attendees. We hope today's workshop inspires further collaboration towards a sustainable industrial future. Have a wonderful day. Before we invite you over to chat a bit, we would like to welcome SIDF CEO Advisor Sulaiman Zghaibi to honor our esteemed guest speakers.